Hey everybody, Anthony Lee Phillips here. Yesterday I talked about the influence of Harry Potter, which was sort of formative for me. But today I want to talk about a book I like a lot more, and that's going to be Name of the Wind. I actually have it in the other room. I should have pulled it out. But I'm very into Name of the Wind. Here's my little Bardarian, my little Patrick Rothfuss pewter figure. I love Name of the Wind. When I read it, it became my totem text. And by totem text, I mean on a day when I don't want to write, I go straight to that book. I crack it open to any page, and within 10 pages, I want to write again. It's just so invigorating to me because of the way that he talks about emotions, because of the way that he weaves a frame story into the story within the story, the meta story. I just love it. Everyone's really upset about him not releasing book 3, and I'm like, listen, I've got like 2,000 pages in the main books and Slow Regard and Narrow Road to dig into. And I have the TAC book actually, and I love, like, there's some really cool lore in that. I've listened to my friend Lucas recently. It's just so good. It's so interesting. And the influence that has had on me has been pretty incredible. And there are 3 ways that, like in the last thing, I want to talk about 3 ways that I try to celebrate Name of the Wind and the other Kingkiller Chronicles. The 3 ways that I try to make Nala Saga a Kvothe-like. And one important way that I'm sure you can predict that I kind of don't want to be like Rothfuss. So the first way is just the immersion. The sheer immersion of Kingkiller is unlike anything. It took me 2 times to get into Name of the Wind. The first time I bounced on chapter 3, and then the second time I did not stop. I didn't stop. And I remember the moment that I fell in love with it. I think it was chapter 6, but it was the moment where you realize that this innkeeper is the main character. Like, before that, I really did not know that the innkeeper was this main character. And part of that was just he wasn't talking very much. It seemed like he was important in some way, but we didn't see his name. We didn't see anything, right? We just saw, oh, this is an ominous innkeeper, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't come in expecting anything, right? And the immersion of, like, you realize, no, this person with red hair with an iron bar is like fighting off these spider demons, basically. And then it's just so cool. It's just so sick. The immersion is a big thing for me. And immersion, honestly, that is my genre. More than anything else, Nala Saga is immersive fantasy. That's very much something that I thought, like, when I read Name of the Wind, it was a culmination of music because it talks about music. I learned things that weren't songs, things that were, I learned to play Wind Turning a Leaf. I learned to play Riding in the Wagon with Ben, things like that. That was my experience in teaching myself guitar, which is my first art. When I write songs, I really am just trying to capture a feeling that can't be put into words. And that book manages to put into words the fact that you can't put something into words. Very strange, so immersive, so good. The second thing is that every culture that he runs into in that book, and especially in book 2, is a fully thought out culture. Tarbean is a fully thought out place with a history. It's on the Great Stone Road. When you read the TAC book, that game has variants in the book. And so it teaches you how to play the game of TAC. It also teaches you how to play the game of Lock, which is very popular in Ademre. And it also teaches you this way, and this way, and this way. And there's an implication that, like, the Feyan realm has a version of TAC, right? It has gambling rules from a specific region. It's so immersive. It takes this one thing and it says, this is an old game. It's like taking chess and saying, shogi is related to chess, but it is a different game. And maybe you can even use the same pieces to an extent, right? You got to give them a nose so that they can point directions. But it's just so cool. That it adds to the immersion, but it's specifically that these cultures are different from each other. That you go to different parts of the map and people behave different. They treat each other differently. That is a huge. I mean, this is a map that I made for book 2, right? And something that I really wanted is like the Boltwood and the Tuskless area is very different from what's now Ruinport. I renamed it. It says Sea Smoke there. I'm going to turn that into maybe the Sea Smoke Temple in some other spot or something like that. And this is different than the Lich encampment area. It's different from the Warwood where the Mogla and the Noor are battling and things like that. The different tribes of orcs, you look at Tolkien and he has so many different tribes of elves, so many different families and things like that. You look at the humans, on the other hand, and you basically have Gondor and Rohan. And those are really, really well made. They're very well crafted, but he kind of ran out of time. And in terms of when you look at Rothfuss, every single town that Kvothe goes to, and he goes to a lot of places, there's an entire culture there that that is independent but also affected by other places, and the way that he handles the sign language of the Edem, sorry, it's just very inspiring. So immersion, just in general, immersion of language, I suppose you could say. Immersion of culture. And then the third way is having the hard and the soft magic systems was just very inspiring. You have the hard magic system, which is all about problem solving. And then you have the soft magic system, which is all about emotion and about understanding. It's about knowing that. And then, when you go into the naming magic, the soft magic of Kingkiller, we don't know a lot about the differences of these different casters yet, but you have namers and you have shapers. You have people who know the name of a thing, and you have people who know the name of a thing and try to change it. They're almost like different philosophies. And I'm very excited to see how that plays out. Now, so one way that I don't want to be like Rothfuss, you can probably predict it, is I don't want to take 14 years to finish a book. I love Rothfuss. He can do whatever he wants as far as I'm concerned. If he dies and he leaves us with these books, I'm happy. For real. I'm seriously happy with it. There's so much cool stuff. I would much prefer if we had the ending. And so it's one of the reasons why the first 3 years of being a writer, I already knew from acting that you can get to the same results without having to do the same process as somebody. My acting hero is Daniel Day-Lewis, and I took basically my entire college career looking at Daniel Day-Lewis and saying, I don't want to do what he's doing, but he's making something beautiful. And he talks in his interviews all the time about, I wanted to inhabit that life. And I listened to all the interviews that I possibly could with Daniel Day-Lewis, and I was like, I think with the Michael Chekhov technique and then a mix of a bunch of the stuff that I learned in Cornish, which is the college that I went to, using a lot of the different things that I learned in Rhonda Swiatkowski's voice and speech class and the exit strategy, and David Taft and his mask class and his clown class. Clown was the hardest class that I ever took. I was like, I think I can piece together a way to drop into another person's life without having to get the flu, without having to not talk to my wife for years, or for a year, I guess. Things like that. And I know that he and a lot of people would say that, that's impossible. But I set out on this writing journey being like, it's not impossible. It's hard. And it takes focus and it takes discipline. But one of the things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to write fast. I'm trying to take this outlining method, which is an expression of my story theory, in the same way that, Bach was able to improvise the things that he wrote. Okay? Bach was able to do that. You don't have to slave over every note. Now, you don't have to rush either. I'm not saying that I wish that Patrick Rothfuss would change his process. I don't. I just don't want to do that. I want to get those poetic forms, to take what I know about Shakespeare and Homer and the Sumerians and Old Norse poetry, and also about like the literature that I love, about television, about like I want to take the lessons from Breaking Bad and take the lessons from Game of Thrones and take lessons from Name of the Wind and say like, what I love is not how much time he took to do something. I love wind turning a leaf. I love that. That makes me feel something. That captures the moment for me. Something that you work really hard on doesn't have to be people's favorite thing. Working harder on something doesn't actually make it better. Capturing a moment makes it better. And I've basically decided that, I'm going to dedicate myself to not editing. There's no way to afford an editor right now, and I'm not going to use AI for anything, ever. And so, dedicating myself to capturing a moment, capturing it quickly, the same way that when I write a song, if I don't write it in 15 minutes, it's never going to get written. That's just not how it works, right? And so, I can take that philosophy, I can imbue my writing with it, and I can write 31 books in 3 years. And that's what I intend to do. So yeah, that's what I thought I would talk about. I think that Nala Saga is more a Kvothe-like than anything else. It's just that not enough people have read Name of the Wind for that to be a really big marketing thing. The only 3 titles that people really attach to are Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, and Lord of the Rings. Those are kind of the 3 fantasies. And now A Court of Thorns and Roses, but there's not Nala Saga doesn't have a lot in common with A Court of Thorns and Roses. ACOTAR is just, it might even be the same audience, but it's not the same kind of story, I think. And if you disagree with me, let me know. I don't have anything against ACOTAR, but I just don't see a lot of similarities in the way that this story is constructed. It's much more like Lord of the Rings. It's much more like the Kingkiller Chronicles. And maybe tomorrow I'll talk about Game of Thrones. Because it definitely, I take a lot of influence from how George Martin writes scenes especially. All right, I'm going to go try to write chapter 33 of book 2, and see you tomorrow.